Hi everyone, Birdthany Chirptano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of this new Navy Blue record, Ways of Knowing. Navy Blue is a bi-coastal rapper, producer, songwriter, model, skateboarding enthusiast, and he is having a bit of a landmark moment right now after defining himself as a key artist in the current abstract hip-hop landscape with respectable releases such as Song of Sage as well as Navy's Reprise, not to mention all the writing, feature, or production credits he's had with the likes of Earl Sweatshirt, Mock Hami, Frank Ocean, and Mike. After all that, he is now hitting us with his Def Jam Records debut, which it's kind of surprising for Def Jam to go this underground for a new release, but hell yeah. Especially for an artist like Navy Blue, who on his tracks typically brings diary-like verses, waves of intense emotions, a lot of lyrical focus too, so I went into this record expecting exactly that. Given that this is a bigger label release, I was interested to see how the production duties would be handled, and it seems that most of those have been handed over to an artist by the name of Budgie, who is also featured on track 4. But even with that change, Navy still rides these deceptively simple and very sample-heavy beats, delivering smoothly flowing chops of soul and jazz. And not only does Budgie's backing make some of the highlights on this thing, like with the loose bass and keys combo on Chosen, but his consistency contributes to the flow of the record in a positive way too, especially as we transition between key thematic moments on the record, like the amazing Life's Terms, which goes right into the much shorter phases, which feels almost like an afterthought from the previous track. As far as things go on the feature front on this record, truth be told, I did expect Navy Blue to maybe try to pull out some of the stops on this project since it is like a Def Jam thing, but he actually kept to his roots on this end of things too. There's a guest spot from LA veteran rapper-producer Zero, as well as experimental neo-soul sorceress Liv, which I think is ultimately a positive thing. I'd rather see this than a bunch of trendy features from artists who don't really add to the vibe of the record overall. Generally on this thing, there's not a whole lot of time spent on guest verses, which honestly fair, especially considering how soul-bearing a lot of these songs are. Adding another perspective may take away more than it adds in some cases here, whether that be during Navy's explorations of his own pettiness and emotional instability on Freehold, or reflections on his late grandfather and the personal impact that he had on the track Pillars, which is soundtracked by these touching, serene, and watery keys. Really a prime example of when this record is at its best, and a show of what it does best, portraying the supreme level of intimacy, self-awareness, openness, and emotional intelligence, which are all strung together across this record like a series of vignettes or chapters in the ongoing book of Navy Blue's life, as opposed to these very cut and dry, segmented songs. But still, even without the bodies of these tracks being super clearly defined, there are quite a few standout highlights on this thing, be that To Fall in Love, which features these cute little mesmerizing reggae samples looping over a gentle beat. Lyrically, Sage brings this cool, focused little verse about falling in love that is so detailed and personal and poetic, it shows you where his heart is truly at on the topic. There's also Life's Terms, which I mentioned earlier, and this track features one of the most dense verses on the entire record. Sage's performance, his delivery here has the free-flowing pace of a spoken word piece, but the end of each bar still hits, and the rhyme scheme is so clever and consistent. For some reason, his performance here reminds me of that of like an early Milo track of formerly Milo, currently Rap Ferreira, during one of his creative peaks in the early 2010s. And there are some pretty intense themes on this cut too, bars about dealing with loss, depression, self-harm. With the track Kill Switch, we get an interesting switch up in 3/4, where Navy goes through some poetic self-affirmations, talking about moving through life's obstacles, and delivers some meditations on mortality too. Window to the Soul offers a really dreamy and rare braggadocious moment on the record, with a super proud refrain: if the category grace, if the category bars, the category poise, trust, I'ma take it all. And this track's one of many on the record where you can catch Navy rapping about becoming a better version of himself, overcoming addiction issues, insecurity problems. There's also a gentle but flex-filled guest verse from Kelly Moonstone on this track too. Then the closing cut, Shadow Shield, is sandwiched between these loving and touching voice messages from his mother and father respectively. Lyrically in this moment, Navy is at a point of feeling thankful and grateful for his life, for his family, for his loved ones, and his ability to transition into this brighter moment in his life, where he feels more stable and more content, and states that his prime motivator is really to make his family proud. Now, I think the Achilles heel with this record is that it doesn't necessarily have the strongest sense of song structure sometimes, which can leave me wanting more here and there, like with the jazzy and dreamy interlude Embers, where Navy describes missing and dreaming about particular members of his family. I just wish we got more out of this track. There's also his super scant verse on The One, which I think could have been added to as well. Then The Medium is an oddly choppy tone setter in my opinion. I know Navy isn't exactly known for explosive moments or performances, anything like that, as many of his rhymes and verses come off more like a very low-key internal monologue. It's really his emotional intensity and his clarity of thought that really ends up selling a lot of it. But still, with that being said, the song doesn't really feel like much more than just a current update on his mind state at the moment, which suddenly throws us into this kind of surreal spiritual experience that he describes and leaves us on a cliffhanger with. I suppose it does center some pretty key themes throughout the entire record, that being his late brother and just also generally family. But even with this being an issue, I think all the songs on this LP in totality reinforce each other pretty well, emotionally, aesthetically, instrumentally. I think Navy continues to be one of the most emotionally compelling and poetic rappers out there currently, even if some of the finer details and loose ends are a bit frayed. I'm feeling a strong 7 to a light 8 on this one. Transition, have you given this record a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, music, review, Navy Blue, forever.